Okay, and we're recording. Okay, hello everybody from North Dakota and New York. This is Dr. Shelley. I am running for North Dakota governor, but today I am interviewing Brad Marshall, who lives in New York, and I'll tell you why. So one of my big platforms for governor is homegrown prosperity. And my way of eating is I went through some health issues and I ended up with a zero carb diet, which is a carnivore diet, which is largely animal-based foods. But here in North Dakota, even though there were major beef producers, we do not have local beef on a scalable way. So homegrown prosperity is helping us generate businesses and revenue within North Dakota to protect us against outside forces, whether it's a virus that closes down a major meatpacking plant, or a trade war, or an oil price war, or the federal government trying to mess with us too much. So Brad, I first found because he was on his own health journey, and he discovered, not that he discovered, but he put it together for me, kind of what made him feel better. And we do self-experiments on our bodies, and he does the croissant diet. So he's very famous for that in the universe. And we're going to link his information in the comments or like somewhere here, so you can read his blog if you want to take a deep dive into why he thinks it's working through saturated fats is what has led to his health journey. And so Brad I'm going to have you talk a little bit, because right now, I think when I talk and record, your face doesn't show up. So Brad, welcome to North Dakota, but you're in New York. So tell us about yourself, because you're very interesting. I fell in love with you first because you were into mitochondria, and when I worked at the cellular level as a pharmacologist, and I fell in love with mitochondria. Now, for those non-science people out there that don't know about mitochondria is like the battery of the cell. It's the power pack of the cell. And that's connected to North Dakota because North Dakota is considered like the little battery of the United States. We have oil, gas, fossil fuels, or coal, wind, geotherm, ethanol. So that's the connection between North Dakota and mitochondria. Brad, tell us about you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes, I have a science background. I went to Cornell for molecular biology. I went on to work at the Berkeley Drosophila Genome Project. And at some point I decided to kind of stop doing sort of science as a job. And I came back to New York, and I started a pastured hog operation. And so
that's cool. So that's cool. So like,
yeah,
you went from the microscope back up to the whole animal level, which is
exactly.
Which is cool. Okay.
Exactly. And so, by the end, we were running about 100 sows on about 60 acres of pasture. We were finishing about maybe 1,000, well, more than that, close to 1,500 pastured hogs a year. But as part of that, I had to learn not only how to raise the pigs, but we had to learn how slaughtering works, how that whole supply chain works, and then after the slaughter, then you still have to make hot dogs and cure bacon, and so I've been part of that at every step and at a lot of different scales, because at the beginning we were very small. The first year we raised 30 hogs, and that was it, and then it grew into what it was. So I've seen, and I built my own USDA slaughterhouse, or not a slaughterhouse, but my own USDA processing center. So we made hot dogs and deli meats and bacon and
yeah. And let me just, for our audience, you cannot sell meat unless you are USDA inspected. So yes, we do not have that here in North Dakota.
With a few exceptions, but
okay.
95 to 99% of the time, that's the case. Yes.
Right. So that's important. And that's not an easy task. How much did it cost you to get USDA certified?
Well, actually, the USDA license itself is free. That doesn't cost you anything.
Right. Okay.
But you have to have a HACCP plan, and you have to have a facility that's capable of carrying out that HACCP plan. And these facilities don't tend to be cheap. By the time you've built a lot of concrete with floor drains, there's a lot of coolers, there's a lot of equipment. They all add up. I've never heard of anyone most USDA plans, they say for even a very tiny one, they say expect to spend $1 million. And I think if you pull it off for that, you've done well.
Yeah. And what do you call a tiny one? How many animals would you process in a day on a tiny one?
So in a typical tiny USDA processor around here, people might do 5 to 10 cows, or maybe up to 20 hogs in a day, something like that.
So that's considered small. That's about $1 million facility
Right.
to meet USDA standards, so
Right.
that you can sell your meat. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so go on.
So anyway, and so that's what I've done. And what the thing on Twitter that got us talking about this was, recently now we've had 3, it was 1 at the time, but now it's 3 huge hog processing plants have closed right now. So 15% of the nation's pork goes through only those 3 facilities. I mean, think about that that's the level of consolidation that the industry has. And so I'm trying to start a new CSA working with a farmer in Illinois.
Remind people what a CSA is.
Oh, sorry. So CSA means community supported agriculture.
I love that. That's homegrown prosperity.
It is. And so basically the idea is that a bunch of people who want to buy your product will buy a share, and that means they get a share of the product when the product is finished. They give you the money up front, and that helps you to actually get the startup funds to produce whatever the product is, and then at the end everybody shares in what's produced. That's in a nutshell, that's the idea. It sounds simple. It's sometimes harder than
it
that,
is. It's like herding cats.
But anyway,
yeah.
Right. And so we would like to do this with a very special kind of pork that I'd like to raise. And the idea of this pork is it's very low in polyunsaturated fats, which are the fats in vegetable oil.
Okay. And if you want to know more about that, if you really want to go down a deep rabbit hole, go to Brad's blog, Fire in the Bottle. I'll have a link in not this movie, but this interview. But that is an amazing product. It'll be an amazing product. Go ahead.
Yes. Check out the story on the blog. The blog is fireinabottle.net, and the article is called Disastrous Trends in American Bacon. And it talks about how over the years, our pork supply has gotten higher and higher and higher in what are basically vegetable oils that are being fed to the animals, and that ends up in the meat. Right. And so I'm kind of making a product that's going to reverse that trend. But what we're running into, the problem that we're running into, and this is a problem I've bumped my head into the whole time I've been doing this, is that you have these very small plants like we talked about, and the problem is that to kind of bring the prices down a little bit, or to be more cost competitive and make it work better for everybody, the farmer, the consumer, and the kind of all of the connector people that there need to be.
Right.
It's better to do these things on a little bit higher volume than, if I did this with 10 pigs, it's just not going to be affordable.
Right.
So
because, remember, I'm just going to jump in here again. Sure. People don't think about, love that farm to table food. They love giving their money to local farmers, and we love that whole thing. But people don't realize that inputs and outputs are super important in farming, like any business, and decreasing inputs will help you be more profitable, or increasing outputs. So go ahead.
Absolutely. And so it really is a classic, it's a classic economy of scale. I mean, and so, the small slaughterhouses they have a lot of overhead. And if you're only processing 20 pigs a day, their services are quite expensive compared to the large scale slaughterhouses.
Right.
And what's happened is,
And large scale, you mean like thousands a day?
large scale, I'm
Like a
talking
corporate.
about tens of thousands a day.
Okay.
I'm talking about uh, Tyson Meats. I'm talking about Cargill. I'm talking about Smithfield.
Okay.
These guys are processing. I don't know. I think the biggest one is like 60,000 pigs a day. It might be
Okay.
more than.
Yeah.
It might be
And it's just important because most people don't know how food is made. And so I'm just trying to give people scale there. So that's why I love
absolutely
that you know all this already. So.
right. And so the problem is that when you start to kind of like scale up a farm-based business, you very quickly run into this issue that it's like, oh, I made this product. We have this pork. It's popular. People want it. I'm making more. And all of a sudden, you start running out of space. The local slaughterhouses can only slaughter so many animals. It's
Right.
like there's
Right.
a cap to what you can do, and it's an artificial cap. It's just based on this USDA availability, but it's like, okay, no one. So the specifically what my friend and I were talking about is we would like to process 80 pigs a month, and that number, if you go to some of the smaller slaughterhouses, like a lot of them only do maybe 30 pigs a week. And so when I talk to them, they go, well, that would be 2/3 of our production, and I would have to, I would basically have to not work with all of my other customers that I've been
Right.
working with forever just to take on your product.
Right.
And then when I call a significantly larger slaughterhouse, they say, well, we could schedule you a lot of production, a quote lot, like a batch, not like a lot of production,
Right. Right.
but their lot size is, the one I just talked to was 1,600 pigs in a day. So that was their smallest group. And so
Okay.
you go from, if you need to get 10 or 20 animals slaughtered, it's fine. If you can send 2,000, you can make a deal on that. But anyone who ends up in that middle ground, there's simply nowhere to send them. No one is doing it. And that's an economic issue, because what's happened is the very small plants can provide their services to people who are growing their own animals,
Right.
and who are selling small farmers markets. And so there's some incentive for them to provide custom services. And so that model has done okay. In fact, they've even added some over the last few years.
Yeah.
But if you're a medium-sized plant, a plant that's doing 200 animals a day or 500 animals a day,
Okay.
the problem is those markets haven't been there. They haven't had a premium market at that scale yet. And they also can't compete with Smithfield. And so,
Right.
they've all gone out of business.
So
Every middle is gone.
yeah. So when you say there's not that premium market, it's just because I think it's kind of like, it sounds like a catch-22 because you can't create that market without having
Exactly.
that 200 to 500. You can't brand North Dakota beef or
Right.
your long chain saturated or low polyunsaturated pig fat,
Exactly.
whatever. You can't brand that, which is going to be awesome. And he's going to do it. But we just have to get this thing because you can't scale it without that thing in the middle, right? So it's a
Right.
catch-22.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
Exactly. And so there's a lot of great ways that we could think about marketing, all these different marketing programs. There's a lot of ways you could do it. You could, like you say, you could market it as a North Dakota product, or
Yes.
you can say this pig is 100% Berkshire, which is the classic British breed with deeply marbled meat, and the color's dark, and it's just fantastic pork.
Okay.
It blows what you buy at the grocery store out of the water. Of course, we're doing that, and then we're also changing the fat composition. So we're doing a lot of things, but
Okay.
and there are, when you talk to guys doing this, there is huge demand for this. For restaurants getting
Yes.
more local pork and higher quality things, and customers, and the demand really is there. But until someone has enough businesses to put it all together and wants to make that big investment, it just
Right.
remains that they're just not there.
Okay.
That's the case right now.
That is so. and this is happening in a lot of states, and several people have tried it, is trying to get investors. And, what is the cost of a mid-size processing facility? Let's say you want to do 250 animals a day. What size facility would you need for that? Or what would that cost about in your head?
Right. I mean, so it's going to depend a lot on what kind, is it beef? Is it pork? Is it poultry? Are you doing all three? Are you also doing smoking and sausage making in that facility? These change the price by many fold.
Okay.
But I recently priced out a plant for New York that probably isn't going to get built, but that was in the low $20 million range. It was around 22 million, I think, was the initial quote. That didn't get far off the drawing board, but
that's like 100 animals a day type facility, right?
That's a couple hundred animals a day.
Oh, a couple hundred. Okay.
But that's not necessarily.
There's a guy named Nate in Oklahoma, maybe, or Nebraska, and he just priced out like a 250 animal, and it might have been beef, like for 45 million, sort of thing. So I guess it depends, but that's just
I'm talking about pigs. So you can do a lot more pigs in the same amount of space than you can do beef. And it also depends, like that the facility I quoted didn't have full like hot dog making lines. It was more focusing on the slaughter.
Right.
More focused on the slaughter. So there's a lot of different plants that do different things. There's plants that do slaughter only. There's plants that do the whole shebang.
I'm just trying to get like a scale of what you have to get to invest in a mid-size.
Right. Well, I think these numbers, right, I think really we're talking in a range of, between 10 and $100 million, right? Like this is sort of like an order of magnitude more than the traditional small plant that people would put $1 million investment into.
Right.
Maybe a couple orders of magnitude bigger, but yeah.
Okay. And so you said that facility, even though you have this great idea and this great product that's really value added and really adds to local food security,
right?
And keeping New York animal ag people independent,
yes,
from big business. It's not going to get off the ground in 2 sentences. It's because it costs a lot and nobody wants to invest in that privately, correct?
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So this is where you might be a little jealous, but North Dakota, and remember, I'm running for North Dakota governor. That's my little free advertising. We actually have a unique political party here. It's called, it's the NPL, and it started as a Republican and then switched to Dem. So we're called the Dem NPL. So in that we use that culture, that part of our history uses state funds to fund things for our state to protect us from outside forces, big business, big business, big federal government at the time, which is what my great grandpa was fighting against. And so we also have been very, very fortunate out here because we had an oil boom. And again, we're like the energy of here. So it is possible, if I get elected, or even if I don't, and it's just a good idea that the governor that does get elected can do this, is they could use those funds, say $50 million, to build a pretty decent, let's say cattle, since Maine were cattle, but we could also add 20 million for pig processing, because we do have some hogs on the eastern side of North Dakota.
Right.
And so that was a very real possibility here in North Dakota. But having said that, let's just say, and I'm a very dark horse in this race because I'm a veterinarian and I'm up against a incumbent, sorry, billionaire. So I have to, I have to do this all on inspiration and good ideas. But let's just say I don't get elected, or I do. Let's say I do and I make this a reality. Would somebody like you start, even though you don't live here and you don't want to leave home, would you consider starting to invest in growing your hogs here so that it could be processed here and build your brand? Would that be something that like an outside producer would come to North Dakota to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think absolutely. I mean, it all depends, but the thing is, what you see in other parts of the country is that so Smithfield built a huge plant in North
Oh,
Carolina,
oh,
and now North Carolina has a huge hog industry, but that wasn't the case. Um, I don't know how many years going back, but that's a fairly recent trend they have the because they have the processing facility there. So the industry sort of sprouted up
okay,
um, around that, and so yeah, it kind of is a thing where people are going to go to where there's capacity, right?
right.
And you could easily do if you've got farmers on the east side of the state doing hogs, we could, and you had the facility, we could send them our business, and
Yeah, okay,
raise the pigs the way we want to, and get the product quality that we need.
okay. So you heard it here, folks. It would not only give our own animal ag an extra avenue for revenue, more locally produced, build our North Dakota brand, but would actually bring people like Brad, who's super smart and knows what he's talking about. You can visit his blog, and I'm going to put that in there. Here, if I become governor, or basically if the state would invest in the infrastructure of homegrown prosperity. Basically, it's
Sure.
value added, it brings business in and it unleashes potential that's already here,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, Brad, I don't want to get this too long because then it's hard to put up on the internet.
Sure.
Is there, I'm sure I'm going to come and visit with you again, like when I'm not running for governor and trying to explain policy and whatever. I am going to take a deep dive with you on mitochondria and your croissant diet and that sense of well-being that produces. So anything else you'd like to add?
I think we've covered most of it. But yeah, thanks for having me on. Fun conversation, and I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Okay, talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.
Stay on.